Campus on 938 Live.
Hello then, you're tuned in to the only show on English radio that brings the voices of our youth straight to you from their schools. I'm Angela Lim, and today on campus, we're coming to you live from Temasek Polytechnic. And today's topic, we will be talking all about public displays of affection. Now, the issue of public displays of affection, or PDA, is definitely a hot topic here with our youth in Singapore. And with a generation of youth that's becoming more diverse in terms of their thought as compared to perhaps their more traditional elders, how should such displays of affection be looked upon in today's context? Additionally, with a lot of social media sites now giving more opportunity for our youth to display their affections online, how then should our youth react to public displays of affection that's becoming more ubiquitous in today's society? Also, what acts or levels of public intimacy are considered acceptable to our youth today? And should PDA be seen as a freedom of expression instead of a social stigma? So we're going to find out more from our very enthusiastic student audience here at Temasek Poly. But before we go into what our students have to say, let's give our panelists a bit of an introduction here. Now we start with Teo Yuan Ching. Yuan Ching is a lecturer from the Diploma of Media, or rather Communications and Media Management, and she'll be able to give us a perspective from where the school is coming from. And Tan Yuan Ling is a youth counselor from the Singapore Children's Society. With working with youth, she's going to give us a perspective on why she thinks are the motivations for why youth seem to display their affections a bit more these days. Mikhail Borka is the marketing director from Anglo Info Singapore and is part of the Anglo Info Global Expat Network. And he's grown up in very many countries around the world and will be able to give us a global perspective on this issue. And finally, your student voice in the audience, Benedict Lee. Benedict is a second-year student from the Diploma in Communications and Media Management. A big round of applause for your panelists, guys. Okay, let's start with Ms. Teo. First of all, okay, let's get your perspective from where the school comes from with regard to PDA, right? What do you think, or have you observed this in class or around school when you're teaching?
Well, definitely. I think there's been an increase in, situations where students think the teachers are not looking, and they start touching each other, groping, and it gets very uncomfortable, especially for the lecturers.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you do anything about it? Let's say you notice such behavior, and then would you intervene, or would you perhaps give them a warning or something like that?
Well, I don't think they are doing this intentionally. Sometimes the couples sit next to each other and they're just really close, touching each other's on the arm and all that. As long as they're not doing anything that's too uncomfortable, you just leave them alone. Mm-hmm.
Right. And does the school have a policy with regard to this kind of behavior? Is there a limit that the school draws in terms of how far the students should go with regard to displaying their affection for each other?
I don't think there's an official, stand about what they can or cannot do, but I think the students themselves are aware of the limits. So in the corridors, in the hallways, etc., the most they do is probably just hold hands. But we don't know what happens in behind closed doors, on the dark corners, or the staircases, where the teachers are not patrolling or looking out. So that way we can't really tell if there's anything serious going on. But if something like that does happen, we probably will have to take some disciplinary action.
Right, and we're going to find out from our students whether in these dark corners there are such displays of affection going on in just a bit. But let's go to Yueling first. Now, Yueling, my question to you is, when you are working with a lot of youth, do you notice that there is an increase in terms of the amount of people, the number of people that are out there who are displaying their affection for each other publicly?
Actually, I do notice a lot of some of the youth that I work with, when they dare to actually do it in the schools, like in front of me, they feel like, oh, okay, because Yueling is very close to us and, we are quite friendly with her, it's okay to show her that, no, we are just loving each other. So for me, sometimes I feel that it's just a genuine display of affection, but I need to actually go and approach them and tell them this is not really appropriate, because you need to take care of what other people around are actually feeling, whether they are comfortable with whatever you are doing and whatever they are actually seeing you doing.
Right, so encouraging sensitivity to what other people are noticing about your behavior as well, something that you would promote as a counselor. Yes. But would you say that there are other motivations for why youth display their affection, perhaps online as well? Could it be a plea for attention, or just general desire to be a bit of an exhibitionist about it? Is it possible?
I think some of them really truly want to show their love to each other and let their friend know that how loving they are with their couple, with their girlfriend, with their boyfriends. Yeah, so I guess that is one thing, like they want to tell their friends how loving they are. Another thing that it could be to just tell other people, no, I got such a nice boyfriend, I have such a cool girlfriend, to show off.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to find out how that makes our student audience feel about it. Now, sometimes when we see these updates on Facebook or even in public when you're on the trains, you're going to find out more what they think. Let's go to Mikhail now. Mikhail has lived in a great many places, so has grown up in LA, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, London, for example. Now, Mikhail, you've seen a lot of PDA perhaps in these various countries. You can perhaps give us a global perspective on this. Do you think that in Singapore, public displays of affection, how does it fare with regard to comparing it with other countries?
Well, I mean, in terms of public displays of affection, I'd say that it's probably not more overt than other places I've been. I mean, probably you'd see a little bit more overt affection, public displays of affection in France or in Western Europe, maybe even the States, much more so. But in Asia, I've noticed that there is generally a little bit more conservative sentiment on the matter, especially when it comes to children around. I mean, people can get a little bit more uncomfortable depending on the situation.
Right. We're going to hear from our student audience as well. If when you see foreigners perhaps displaying affection in Singapore, do you tend to be a bit more forgiving of it, taking note of these cultural differences? Or do you, when you go overseas, do you tend to be a bit more sensitive, depending on where you are, culturally sensitive, that is? We're going to find out from a student audience as well. Let's go to Benedict now. Benedict is a student here, and maybe you can answer Yuan Ching's questions about whether or not there are funny things going on in the dark corners of the school.
I can't say that for myself, but all I can say is that more of these things are coming to light because there's like a wave of like citizen journalism. You see more people posting all these kind of photos on Storm, and people all like all the older generation being conservative for it, and they're all like going like, oh, that's so bad, we don't do that in our generation, that kind of thing. So I think that's what's happening right now.
Okay, and Benedict, I want to get your opinion before we go to our students as well. What's your take on PDA? Are you accepting of it?
I'm okay with it. I think there's a certain limit, as in like under certain contexts where there are like small children in front of you, you don't really show them prolonged PDA, like me holding hands or a small peck on cheek, that's all.
Right, and we're going to find out what the rest of our student audience limits are on these things, and among other questions that we have for you as well. Stay tuned on campus on 938 Live. Today we're discussing PDA, or public displays of affection in Singapore. Are Singaporean teens too open with their public displays of affection? You've heard all about what PDA is about. You're going to hear from our student audience in just a moment. Stay with us on campus on 938 Live, coming to you from Temasek Polytechnic.
Campus on 938 Live.
All right, welcome back into campus on 938 Live. Thank you for joining us today. We're at Temasek Polytechnic today talking all about public displays of affection. Are Singaporean teens too open with their public displays of affection? We've heard from our panelists. We're going to go now to our student audience. And I think we have Jethro already with a comment here. I'm going to ask Jethro here how you feel a bit about public displays of affection. Is it something you've observed as a student here?
Well, I don't really see it in campus, but when I'm traveling outside, yeah, I get to see quite a lot of it, and it usually happens at night when the buses are very empty.
Okay, so what do you do when you notice these things? What are your reactions instinctively when you notice this kind of behavior?
Well, it gets pretty awkward, but we'll just turn away. I mean, ultimately it's their choice whether or not they want to do it or not, but we should just try to be a little bit more accepting.
Okay, so you come from a bit more of an accepting, laid-back sort of perspective where you feel, yeah, it makes me uncomfortable, but at the same time, you wouldn't do anything about it, would you, Jethro? That you wouldn't go up to someone and correct him or her?
Well, I guess we got to trust that society has its limits.
Okay, we're going to hear from another member of our student audience now who's ready with a comment. Hi, what's your name?
Andre.
Okay, Andre, do you agree with Jethro, or do you feel that, yeah, you've observed PDA around in school perhaps?
In school, in public transports, in public around the world.
Okay, so you've seen it pretty much everywhere. What is your take on it? Do you agree that this is something that should be acceptable? Do you think Jethro was right that we should be laid back about it and see?
Well, I believe in liberal freedom. We all have the right to do what we want to. However, there should be a limit because we have to take in consideration of other people's what's their views on this. Do they accept it, or do they ignore it, or in fact, are they actually offended by it? Basically, the people who are actually most sensitive to these are our older generation. They're more conservative. They've lived in a society where such displays were considered blasphemous among their people. And the kids as well, our younger generation. As we all know, kids believe everything. They're incredibly impressionable. So therefore, we should, I say that PDA should be limited to the point that kids do not view these displays of affection before their innocence is lost at a later age.
Right. So when you notice this, Andre, when you see this sort of behavior, and it's a fantastic point you brought up about sensitivity to the elderly or the children, perhaps, as some examples of people we have to be considerate about. But also, what would you do if you're in that situation and you see someone making out in public, for example, in front of children? Would you take a stand on it?
Yes, I will take a stand without hesitation. Since I am going to be the older generation that's going to lead this younger generation, I have to take responsibility and ensure that their innocence is preserved so that I can break it at a later age.
Right, okay, we're going to hear more from our student audience here at Temasek Polytechnic, and today our topic is public displays of affection. We're going to find out what our youth feel about it today. Stay with us on campus on 938 Live.
Campus on 938 Live.
Welcome to Campus on 938 Live. We're continuing this discussion here at Temasek Poly, and our question today is, are Singaporean youth increasingly displaying their affections a lot more? Also, PDA, the idea of public displays of affection. We're going to find out more from our student audience now. Earlier, Andre has mentioned how he wouldn't have gone up to, or he would go up to someone to correct them if he felt that they were being too insensitive to children or elderly, perhaps. Let's go to the student audience again to hear what this other student has to say. What's your name, dear?
Tanuja.
Hi, Tanuja. Do you have a story to tell us about perhaps your experience being on the train in this sense?
Yes, there was once I was on the train and it was around 5 p.m. after work, and this couple were hugging each other quite openly, and there was this elderly Muslim man in traditional clothes. He was sitting next to them and he kept looking up at them and shaking his head, and like after about 20 minutes I think he felt that it was enough, and he got up and he said, I don't feel what you're doing is right. Could you please stop it? But the guy got really aggressive and he said, no, I will do what I want to do. And he carried on, but the Muslim man was a bit disturbed by it, and that's when I got off the train.
Right, and that's a fantastic story, Tanuja, about the clash perhaps between the value systems of people who are more traditional, maybe in the older generation, and of course people who are younger these days, who are a bit more open about it. And it's interesting that the person who was engaging in the PDA was actually resistant, and he actually reacted quite aggressively to someone who told him off. But is it true that only the older generation are a bit conservative about this? Going to hear more as well from another member of our student audience. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Alice. Yeah, I agree that even though our society now, we are different from the older generation, as in we are more influenced by a Western culture. However, we are still an Asian society, so we should know when where the boundaries are and stop. As in, it's okay to kiss, it's okay to hug, but if you grope and touch each other's butts, it isn't appropriate. It isn't appropriate at all. So, yes.
Okay, so you're coming from also, you're a young person, but you still feel that there are limits. Also, as Asians, we have to have that kind of a boundary to some extent. It shouldn't be all liberal. All right, we're going to hear a bit more from Joshua, I think, who's at the back there. Joshua, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. I think you can't actually blame today's youth for being so liberal when it comes to public displays of affection, mostly because of the fact that we grew up in a world where there are a lot of movies from the US and the UK which really show quite a lot of public displays of affection. So I think today's youth would actually think that it's okay to display some form of affection in public, but even though there are limits, I think that everybody thinks it's sort of fine to do that right now.
Right, Yue Ling, is that something that you've observed as well, working with youth, that, it does seem that youth are a bit more liberal about it?
Actually, I feel that even, maybe you are right, that exposure to the Western culture has made us more liberal and all. But I feel that basic human respect should still be in place. If you know that there are people around you that feel uncomfortable, then maybe you should stop. Yeah, basic respect.
that's why I think it's important.
Right. And Mikhail, it's great that Joshua has mentioned that, Western influences are something that has definitely changed the way youth perceive PDA or public displays of affection. You've lived in various parts of the world, in the Western world. I mean, you've lived in London, California. What is your take when it comes to what Joshua is saying?
I think he has a really valid point. Never has there really been a time before where a person from England, France, Middle East, and Asia, they could all talk to each other and they'd all know the same movie. They've all seen it because it's all part of popular culture, and it's just something amazing when that happens. So when it comes to public displays of affection, you really do notice that, the same kind of, if you talk about the same scene in a movie, an erotic scene or something, it is something that everyone kind of knows about. So it's all the same references. So it is, Western culture is definitely becoming more prevalent in the global society we live in.
Right, so especially when we watch TV or in movies, it becomes a bit more glamorized, perhaps, kissing in the train makes it romantic, for example. So in that sense, how then do our youth regulate their behavior? How then do they decide how far to go or what the boundaries are? We're going to hear from another member of the student audience. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Singy. As part of a couple, I think that as a couple, you should be more civic-minded, even though I do admit that occasionally we do get carried away. However, we should take our cues from the people who are around us. If we get any funny looks or anything like this, I think that that's time to stop. And especially when you're in public, we do check on each other like, hey, this is public, so tone down a bit. I guess everyone should have their limits, and after all, it is public. There are a lot of people around. Everyone has differing thoughts on this issue, so you should respect everyone. It's a form of respect.
Right, and taking your cues from other people, from their reactions as well, it's how you regulate your behavior, Cindy. Let's go to Benedict now. Benedict's a student panelist here now. Benedict, in your perspective, do you agree that with what Cindy is saying, that sometimes, apart from having your own value system about this sort of thing, being sensitive to what other people are reacting, how other people are reacting to you is very important as well?
I agree, it's important, but we have to understand that society keeps changing every single generation. So those people who are from the conservative generation, right, they have to compromise as well. They can't expect us to give in all the time.
Right, and that's another thing that we're going to talk about as well, and Campus returns in just a moment. We have videos that are being posted online of couples making out. How do our student audiences feel, or how does our student audience feel about that? Stay tuned on Campus on 938 Live. We're talking about public displays of affection today, and we're coming to you live from Temasek Polytechnic. Stay tuned.
Campus on 938 Live.
Thanks for staying tuned on Campus on 938 Live. I'm coming to you from Temasek Polytechnic, where the very enthusiastic students today are discussing public displays of affection. Let's go straight to the student audience now. We have Rachel waiting with a comment.
Hi, I think PDA has been going on for quite a while, but we feel that there has been increase due to social media. Couples have been posting stuff like pictures of them kissing, groping, and stuff like that. But when it comes down to like videos of them doing very weird stuff, I feel it looks a bit like they're having sex. I think it's a bit too much.
So Rachel, where do you see these videos? How do you come into contact with them?
I see them on Facebook. I do not know these people at all, but I don't know why it's on my timeline. So it's kind of weird. At first, it looks like a love story. So I thought, oh, so sweet. Like, okay, I should just watch it. And then I'm like totally stunned at what I see, and like, yeah, and then after my brother, can you don't see this video?
Right.
If you see it, just don't see it.
That's interesting because it seems people are circulating these videos. That means there must be some element of people enjoying to watch them, perhaps maybe in a bit of a voyeuristic sort of a way. Let's hear what Mikhail has to say. Mikhail, you have a comment to make about this sort of behavior or videos that are being circulated online.
Before I do, I have a question. I mean, how elaborate are these things? Do they wear costumes or? I mean, are they acting? Do they have lines that they read? I mean, anyway, I don't know. But no, you have a really interesting point. I think that, I mean, I was born in 1987, and I got onto Facebook in 2000. I got onto Facebook in 2006, my first year in university. But before that, I was on Hi5, Friendster, and all them, but they're long gone now. And so, I mean, in my part of the generation, we kind of are older, and we are a lot more conscientious about what we put online, because we're sort of aware that once it's online, it can stay up there forever. It's on someone else's computer, it doesn't disappear. And in the past, before all the social media stuff was out, before we had cameras on our cell phones, we did. We had moments. If I had, I had a moment with a friend, or a group, or my significant other. The moment would pass, but would still remain in our heads. It would be between us. But now that if it's online, it's not between us anymore. It's between us, and everyone else who happened to see it.
Right, the permanence of the video, it's almost immortal putting it online. Okay, we're going to go to the floor as well. Now we have a question from there over at the back. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Darren. Actually, before I go into my question, I have a comment to add. I agree with the panelists, because especially on Facebook, when a video is circulating or picture, all you do is press share, and that picture or video goes out to another few hundred people, and another share, another few thousand, perhaps. But my question is directed actually to my lecturer. Does my lecturer feel that, when PDA happens in classes or in school, when they are like outright doing it, and the lecturer doesn't stop them, or their friends don't, when they graduate, they would feel that it's like natural, it's the right thing to do, no one's telling me off, so it's correct. Does she feel that this will actually affect other generations that slowly come in?
Well, in the first place, I think most of the students know that there are certain limitations. So if it's just holding hands, I think most of the lecturers will just say, okay, that's, we're not going to go up to them and say, you can't hold hands in public. But if like I said earlier, if it goes way out of hand and students start getting a bit more, touchy-feely, I think that's when the lecturers will go up to them and say, I think this is not an appropriate place to be carrying out these actions. You should stop it. And at the same time, I think for the friends as well, sometimes when these incidents happen, the friends sort of say, they won't say it outrightly in front of them, because I think it's more of a respect. We were going to let you do your own thing. But once they leave, they might feel a bit uncomfortable about it. I don't think they also want to be seen as being very prudish. If it's your peers and like, why are you saying such things to me? Aren't you also my friend, and you should support me and not go against me? So I think that's the whole idea of why the classmates or the friends don't go up to them and say, stop doing this, is not right.
Right. Again, that difference between what you privately hold as an opinion or a value system, and then actually making a stand about it. That's something that our youth are still, a little bit, they're not really on the same page with. They can disagree or agree with that. Let's go to another comment on the floor over there. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Shahida.
Hi, Shahida. Do you have a comment to make?
Personally, if I go inside a bus, if I see a couple sitting at the back, I won't sit near them, because I know they will do something. There's a reason for them to sit behind. That's why they choose the back seat. So I will sit somewhere in front, and I think normal touching is okay, but intensive hugging and like touching each other's body is disturbing.
Right, so that's your limit for you, that, beyond a certain point of, beyond hugging, for example, in your case, for you that's a little bit, you're not being very sensitive to other people and how they feel about it. Okay, let's go to Farah here, who's ready with another comment.
Hi, I'm Farah, yeah. Okay, okay, that's boundaries when you see it personally, but there's boundaries online, for me personally, of course. I think even conversations you have with your partner is just too much. I just don't need to, just stop, Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting you brought up conversation as also a form of public display of affection. It's not just about what you see.
Yeah. I mean, when you post it on Facebook, like, I have about, I think, 700 friends on Facebook. If you post something online, like, everyone else can see, and if you don't, you don't private your profile, you can see it and everything. It's just not nice. I just feel really uncomfortable with it. So yeah.
Right. Thanks for that perspective, Farah. We're going to go now to perhaps our final comment for the day. Hi, Andre, you have another comment to make about.
Yes. All right. Earlier we discussed that the reasons for the increase in PDA is actually due to social media. We're blaming that social media has actually shown displays of public affections that our youths are taking in. Now the thing is, it takes more than one hand to clap. And now we have to actually look at the duties of Parents, guardians, and the dude on the street, if you're listening to this, pay attention. Okay, now, you know that the younger generation will inevitably be influenced by social media. We can't avoid it. It's part of our lives. So it's actually your duty to educate them on the proper ethics and morality about displaying these affections. Train them young, and they will grow up disciplined and teach the younger generation, and I will be known as the man who gave the suggestion to destroy PDA.
Okay, thank you so much, Andre, for that opinion. Now, he's talking a little bit about the responsibility that lies. Who should actually be the one to tell people, tell our younger generation what the limits are, or should it come from within us? Like a lot of our students have already shared, using reactions as the gauge, or also, innately what your level of acceptability for PDA is very much varies between person to person. This has been a very fantastic discussion. Thank you so much, our students here at Temasek Polytechnic. Also, big thank you to our panelists for coming down today. Today, we're discussing public displays of affection at Temasek Polytechnic, and this has been Campus on 938 Live. I'm Angela Lim.